He was too small to understand death, but he knew his mother wasn't waking, and in the silence of the burning savanna, the tiny cub refused to leave her side, as if his love alone could keep her alive. Her breathing was fading, the heat closing in, and there was no one else in sight to help them. What happened next would become a fight for survival that no one who witnessed it would ever forget. The afternoon heat lay heavy across the open savanna, pressing down on the dry grass and shimmering earth as a small black panther cub paced in tight circles around his mother. Her body was still, stretched beneath a thin patch of shade that offered little relief from the relentless sun. He nudged her shoulder with his nose, then pressed closer, releasing soft cries that trembled with confusion and fear. Her chest rose and fell in shallow movements, barely strong enough to stir the dust at her side. The cub waited, watching her face for any sign of response, his small body quivering as instinct urged him to stay near. Around them, the landscape stretched wide and indifferent, the distant horizon wavering in the heat like a mirage that promised nothing. No herd moved nearby. No wind broke the silence, and the familiar sound of life felt strangely far away. He circled her again, paused carefully against the dry ground, and lowered his head to rest against her side. The warmth of her body remained, but it carried a troubling stillness that made him whimper softly. He did not understand what had happened, only that she was not rising to guide him or lead him toward water and safety. The bond between them held him there, stronger than fear or hunger, rooted in the quiet certainty that she was the center of his world. Time passed slowly, marked only by the shifting light and the faint rhythm of her breathing. He lifted his head now and then, scanning the distance with wide golden eyes that searched for movement or sound. The savanna offered no answer, only a vast stillness that seemed to echo his loneliness. Yet he remained beside her, pressing close as if his presence alone might call her back to strength. In small gestures of care, he licked the dust from her fur and rested his chin gently along her flank. The simple act steadied him, giving shape to his worry and keeping him anchored in the moment. A faint stir passed through her body, almost too slight to notice, and he lifted his head quickly, ears twitching with fragile hope. Her breathing continued, uneven but present, a quiet reminder that life still lingered within her weakened form. The cub settled beside her once more, folding his legs beneath him and keeping watch with patient attention. The afternoon slowly leaned toward evening, and the light softened across the land, touching them with a gentler glow. In that calm stillness, his fear eased just enough for him to breathe steadily and listen to the world around them. He stayed close, unwilling to wander even a few steps away, his loyalty guiding every choice he made. The fragile line between survival and loss rested quietly in that shared silence, carried in each breath she took and every small movement he offered in return. For now, the cub simply remained, guarding her with the steady devotion of one life bound completely to another. The savanna watched in stillness, holding their story in the hush of fading daylight as warmth lingered close around them, and the promise of endurance rested quietly beside love that refused to leave her side even as the long day drew toward its gentle close beneath the wide open sky of evening, and the steady rhythm of life continued softly around them, while the cub remained watchful and near his mother in silent, faithful companionship through every passing moment of that tender hour until darkness began to settle across the quiet land and hold them both safely. A ranger patrol moving slowly along the northern track noticed the cub long before they understood what they were seeing. At first it was only a flicker of movement in the heat, a small dark shape pacing near a lone acacia tree, too exposed for an animal that young. The vehicle slowed, tires crunching softly over dry earth, and the lead ranger lifted her binoculars, watching the cub circle again and again, never straying far from a single spot. His movements carried a restless urgency that felt out of place in the still afternoon. Even from a distance, the pattern spoke of distress, not play, and a quiet concern passed between the rangers without words. They approached with caution, allowing the engine to idle low, careful not to startle him. The cub looked up, his ears flicking forward, then turned his head deliberately toward the tree and back again, repeating the motion as though guiding them. It was a simple gesture, but it held purpose, and the rangers followed his lead. As they drew closer, the reason became painfully clear. Beneath the sparse shade lay the mother, her body stretched and unmoving, sides rising only faintly with each shallow breath. The heat had drained her strength, and the weight of pregnancy had left her vulnerable against the relentless sun. The team moved quickly but calmly, their training guiding every step. One ranger positioned herself a short distance away to keep the cub in view, while the others approached the mother, voices low, movement steady and deliberate. They assessed her condition with practiced care, noting the dryness of her nose, the weakness in her pulse, and the exhaustion etched into every line of her body. The situation was urgent, but panic had no place here. Only patience and skill could carry them forward. A canvas shade was raised to block the sun, and water was applied gently along her paws and belly to ease the heat from her body. Medical supplies were unpacked with quiet efficiency, and an intravenous line was prepared to begin rehydration. Through it all, the cub remained nearby, watching with wary eyes, his small frame tense yet unwilling to retreat. One ranger knelt at a respectful distance, speaking softly, her voice calm and reassuring, allowing him space while acknowledging his presence. Gradually, his posture softened, and he settled into the grass, still alert but no longer panicked. The trust was fragile, built moment by moment, as the team worked with care rather than force. Time passed in careful rhythm, each action measured and gentle, focused entirely on stabilizing the mother and protecting the cub from further stress. The Savanna remained quiet around them, as if holding its breath while life was slowly coaxed back into balance. A faint improvement came as her breathing deepened slightly, her body responding to the fluids and shade. It was a small change, but enough to steady the atmosphere and renew the team's determination. The cub edged closer, lowering himself beside her once more, comforted by her presence and the calm of the humans who now shared the space. The moment carried a quiet understanding, a shared effort between species bound by compassion and necessity. Survival depended on cooperation, on patience, and on the fragile trust forming beneath the wide open sky. The journey to the rehabilitation center was careful and unhurried, guided by the quiet understanding that every movement mattered for the exhausted mother and the cub who refused to leave her side. Inside the shaded transport unit, cool air replaced the harsh heat of the Savanna, and the steady rhythm of the vehicle blended with the soft sounds of breathing and distant wildlife. The cub remained close, pressed against the barrier beside his mother, his eyes following every small motion as if learning a new world that felt unfamiliar yet safe. At the center, a team worked with calm precision, lifting her gently and settling her into a quiet enclosure designed for rest and recovery. Time became the most important medicine. Fluids restored her strength. Shade protected her from further stress, and careful observation ensured every small change was noticed and respected. The cub adjusted slowly, exploring the enclosure in hesitant steps before returning again and again to her side, reassured by her scent and presence. Days passed in a soft rhythm of care. The mother's breathing steadied, her body gradually reclaiming the strength that had been drained by heat and exhaustion. Her eyes opened fully, alert and aware, and she began to lift her head, then shift her weight, then stand. Each movement was a quiet victory shared by those who watched from a respectful distance. The cub responded immediately, his energy brightening, his confidence returning as he followed her, nudging her shoulder and curling beside her during rest. Their bond deepened in the stillness, strengthened by survival and the simple comfort of being together again. The approaching birth became a gentle focus of attention, not rushed or forced, only supported with patience and care. When the time came, it unfolded naturally, guided by instinct and the calm environment that surrounded her. New life entered the world quietly, small and fragile yet full of promise, and the enclosure filled with a sense of wonder that needed no celebration to be felt. The cub watched, curious and calm, as the family expanded, his place beside his mother never wavering. As weeks turned into strength and stability, preparations began for their return to the wild. The enclosure door opened onto familiar land, the air carrying scents and sound that belonged to them. The mother stepped forward slowly, her movement steady, her body strong again, the cub and the newborns close at her side. She paused, lifted her head to the open horizon, then moved ahead with quiet certainty. The family crossed into the tall grass, blending with the rhythm of the landscape, reclaiming the life that had nearly been lost. Those who had cared for them remained still, watching from afar, not as owners of the moment, but as witnesses to resilience. The return carried no grand gesture, only the quiet satisfaction of life restored and allowed to continue. In the fading light, the Savanna welcomed them back, and the bond between survival and compassion settled gently into memory, carried forward in every step the family took into their natural world.